Hello, my name is Doreena Jennings, and I have written a piece which is a mixture of prose and poetry. It's called A Mother's Journey, and it's in a monologue style. So here we go. A Mother's Journey. From this angle, it doesn't look much. It's sparkle, dimmed by dust. I've been watching it for weeks. The many shadows cast on the ceiling by each wired droplet. It had been so beautiful when I put it up first. Sparkled and gave the room a bit of elegance. Its daytime plea, I'm still here, begging me to take it down, clean it, give it a bit of TLC to bring it back to life. But I'd barely left the couch. Spending my days flicking through channels or staring up at the ceiling, anything to distract myself from thinking about what had happened. At night when I went to bed, I just lay there, eyes wide open, unable to sleep, my mind trying to piece together his life, his last movements, and the sequence of events. I had so few actual details, so I started to imagine them. Their cries wake me from a late afternoon nap, calling through the small gap between glass doors. It takes only a few moments for them to cross the sky, and I hurry to the high part of the deck to view this ritual. They start from the west, travelling in small V-shapes, quickly joined by others from the east. Some fly above the house, their cries louder, squawking, we're still here. Northbound streams of arrows, broken here and there by a solo flyer. A straggler from the last group, a leader of the next, or simply an independent thinker. Their sound transports me back to Donegal, where as a young married woman they signalled another ritual, time to retrieve washing from the line, to call the children from the fields, to gather firewood, triggering a memory of him standing on an upturned tea chest, a raft out at sea, in need of rescuing even then, waving skinny arms skywards. Over here! I'm over here. That morning something had changed. It was as if overnight all those things that had held me to the spot had disappeared. For once I'd managed to sleep through it the whole night. I woke with one thought in mind, to do something, to push aside those circling thoughts and find answers. I didn't allow myself to think too much in case I talked myself out of it. It was time I just needed to do it. I grabbed my bags, some letters from the hospital, got into my car and headed for Dublin. An hour and a half later I pulled into the hospital car park and looked for free space. But when I passed the morgue for the second time, memories came flooding back. I could see it all again. 2 Garda waiting for us. We watched them get out of their car. Father John approached and spoke to them before we filed in. They led us into a warm room with candles and chairs. It was the pink scarf that I noticed first, carefully folded around your neck. No match for your hard hat or steel cap boots. Gave you a foreign appearance, like you didn't belong here. How many times you had felt that. Peeling it back, I wanted to see everything, such a small bruise marking the transition between life and death. I stopped, remembering privacy was something you closely guarded. As the priest started the prayers, I found you wrongly labelled John Doe. I bent to kiss your forehead, to smooth your hair, to warm your toes. Something beeped me from behind and I started another round of the car park. This time I found a spot and parked. The woman behind the desk looked efficient. She wore blue designer glasses. I came to collect some clothes belonging to my son. Why do you think we would have your son's clothes here? Is he with you? In my silence, she looked around to see if there was anybody with me. No, I managed to continue. He was brought here by ambulance 3 weeks ago. Where is he now? He's gone. They couldn't resuscitate him. I came to get his clothes back. I need to see if he left a note. Do you know if he left a note? She nodded. I see. Are you here by yourself? Yes. I handed her the condolence letter I received from the hospital with all his details. Take a seat. I won't keep you long. I'll find out. I was sure he would have left me a note, and I knew all his hiding places. They may have missed something. Of course I'd come alone. There are some things mothers can only do alone. After a few minutes, the woman returned. We have nothing here belonging to your son. You could try Kilmainham Garda Station. They were on duty that night. They should be able to help. I left, repeating her instructions under my breath like a mantra. It's funny when you're aware of your destination, but you don't really want to get there, not knowing what you'll find. I hadn't intended this, to be passing by the very spot. Hadn't thought this out. On James's Street, I stopped at a little railed-in patch of grass. The one with the big stone with Mount Brown carved into it. There were 2 sycamore trees stood on an incline. I was flagging. My stomach was turning, my heart beating faster and faster. I grabbed onto the railing for support and pulled myself rail by rail until I was level with the first tree, his tree. It was almost bare. Leaves lay in small mounds at the foot of the tree. Others had already started to mulch back into the earth. At times, spinning me into madness, filling my head with him, Sweeney's legend tormented me, a reminder that he too wandered from place to place, disconnected, looking for a break from the stone pillow, a soft place to shelter, safe enough to envision his home, his children, his loves. He found doorways, cars and containers, covered himself in sleeping bag and newspapers heralding the end of the tiger's roar, while in my dreams I climb high with him a tree off James's Street, imagining each foothold he had taken, and as our feet leave the sycamore branch, I quickly take his hand, and together again we fly. Jerry saw him last on Grafton Street, with a fractured bowl by his side. Bonnie saw him behind the central bank in heated discussion with a guard. I last saw him near the hospital with some winos he knew. Jovial, he bantered with them, far flung from his roots. I watched a while from the safety of my car, spread out the bags of clothes that he'd stored in my shed. Saw him measure up Johnny for old Levi jeans and Jimmy his treasured safety boots. Some knew him as Charmer, Builder, Daddy. Others called him a scumbag, a waster, junkie. But each year, when autumn begins to bite and evenings start getting shoulder, I call out to him the way mothers often do. Firstborn, love, son. At the Garda station, I found the waiting room almost empty. Warm now, sweating and anxious, I took a seat and waited. When it was my turn, I got up and approached the hatch and began making my request. The Garda, a man in his probably 60s, stopped me. You'll have to speak up, I can't hear you. I repeated my request a little louder. When was this? What date? What time did it happen? What was his name again? He asked. I answered in a slow, deliberate voice, not wanting to repeat myself. The words felt as if they were coming from a decoy, as if something inside my coat was supplying the answers. It was difficult recounting the circumstances. Retelling them made it feel more real. What was the name again? Just a moment, please. I'll check for you. After about 5 or 6 minutes, the Garda came back. The clothes you have requested are part of an ongoing investigation, and it will be a week or two before they can be released, he said. In truth, I was becoming a little uneasy, a little agitated. What are you investigating? Come back next week and we'll see what we can do then. The disappointment must have shown on my face because he continued a little more patiently. We'll give you a call as soon as they're ready for collection. There was no traffic on Store Street that day, no parking allowed, security heavy. Queen Elizabeth's first state visit to Dublin. We parked outside the city, took the Dart to Connolly. We got there early, sat in a fancy bar. Across the road. Someone bought me a drink. It was foggy and raining. Oh, or was it dry and warm? Memories such as these can be like tissue, easily torn. 10 minutes before the appointed time, someone took my arm, helped me navigate barriers to cross the road. We stood outside the blue doors. I smoked one, then another. Above me, the Flemish bonded walls, terracotta ridge tiles, and red brick chimney stacks. I thought about the crackled pots you gave me last Mother's Day. The windows gazed at me, benevolent. Above the doors, a sandstone coat of arms, and a lintel cornice carved with the words, Coroner's Court. Someone held the door open, and I walked through. There is a part of this story I've left out. Something that happened that I didn't tell you about. At first, when I wrote this event, it just didn't seem real. I was finding it hard to put it into words. It was like a dream, or as if I'd met a ghost. After I had finally reached the Garda station, there was another person there. As I arrived, a young man was making his way towards the counter. I sat and watched him, half listening to what he was saying, making a mental note to myself. You can hear everything here. He had lost something, a driver's license, I think. The Garda gave him forms to fill out, and he took a pen from his breast pocket and a very smart jacket, and he sat down. And then it was my turn. I told you all about that. But know what happened next? When I turned to leave, the young man got up and approached me, offering me assistance. Are you okay? You seem a little shaken. Can I get you a glass of water? Couldn't help overhearing. I looked at him blankly. It took me a few seconds to register what he was saying. Is someone with you, waiting for you? No, I came alone. Are you driving? Have you a car? Yes, I have a car. Oh, at the hospital. Let me drive you back. I thought the hospital would have his clothes. They sent me here. I need to find his clothes. I really would like to drive you. It's no trouble. Give me a minute. Sit down over here. I looked up at him, into his face. Yes, he had a look of him across the eyes, the arch of his eyebrows. I made a faint smile and thanked him. He finished his business, opened the door for me, and took my arm to steady me. He took such great care, and I let him lead me. He settled me into the front passenger seat of his car, and when he got in himself, he turned towards me. I'm so sorry about your son. It must be very difficult for you. I'm struggling to know what to say. Thank you, I whispered. He was found on a tree near the hospital. It was a sycamore tree. This was difficult for me to understand, how anyone would be able to do such a thing on a main road in the city of Dublin, without being noticed, without anyone trying to stop them. How old was your son? 37. I stopped and thought for a moment before I said anything. He looked a little like you. He took his eyes off the steering wheel, off his driving, to look at me, repeating the words slowly. 37. I'm 37. You're not a builder, are you? No, he laughed. I'd be no good for building. I'm a flautist, traditional flute mostly. Oh, you must enjoy that. His face lit up and he was silent for a couple of seconds, as if considering the question. You know, I love it. I really love it. I never thought of whether I enjoyed it or not. I just play. Your parents must be delighted with you. His face changed. I think I might have to get a real job soon. My parents would be happier if I got something more permanent. I felt a strange pang of sorrow on his behalf, that he might even consider giving up his passion for a permanent, steady job. But then I remembered, for many years I had thought that too, how I'd badgered my son into getting a steady job or earn a decent income, what I would have given for a child to be happy playing music, to follow their dreams. He said he'd been in the same place once or twice, told me about times when he had felt disillusioned with his life. Music had brought him back, had pulled him out of the black hole more than once. We pulled into the car park. It was a short journey, less than 10 minutes. But it felt so long. For a few moments we sat there in silence. He turned to ask if I needed anything, if there was anything else he could do, if I needed a cup of tea or coffee. I knew I would have loved another cup of coffee, to share one, to have more of a chat. But I shook my head, thinking my grief wasn't something that he should have to share any longer. I took his hand, thanked him, and said goodbye. He took a deep breath, and for a few moments he didn't attempt to move. Then he got out of his car, opened the door for me, waited for me to get out, and gave me a hug. On that journey home, I felt uplifted, inexplicably hopeful. I thought about the young man, imagined him a guardian angel that had been sent to ease my day. Everyone has their own music, a tune, a melody that fuels them, something that brings them back to themselves. I started to wonder whose voice could reach me now. 2 weeks after my visit, I got word from the guard at the station his clothes were ready. I arranged for them to be collected and brought to me. One by one, I removed them from a bag and placed them on the kitchen table. I examined each one carefully. The grey hoodie, a shredded t-shirt cut from his body by paramedics, his red striped jeans, and his favourite Calvin Klein boxers. No. I tried to breathe, to calm myself, taking several long breaths in and out. After a few minutes, my mind wandered back to the day in Dublin. I started to think about the hospital, the guard at the station, and the flautist. I moved over to the shelves by the window, selected a CD to play. In the garden, snow was falling, was already heavy on the ground, a cold white wonderland. It'll be Christmas soon. In the background, James Galway had picked up his golden flute and was playing Morriconi's Gabriel's oboe. I smiled. It's funny how one incident can change your perspective. But in truth, when I look back on that day, I can see that along with all the sadness, there was this sprinkling of joy. It was the joy that anything was possible, and that even in difficult times, that a pure stranger can change or soften harsh moments and make a permanent change. It was as if there was something otherworldly about it. And so to this day, when I think about that young man's willingness to help, it makes me smile, as if someone somewhere out there is looking after me. And that makes me feel blessed. Thank you very much. Thank you.